Okay, here we are. We're live this evening. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening's discussion. I have Elizabeth Devlin with me here on Facebook Live this evening. As you may recall, we did a 6-week series introduction to the Enneagram during July and August. Elizabeth has well over 25 years of experience in this field. Tonight is a very special discussion as Elizabeth will be talking about her new book, Enneagram Ancient Stories for Modern Living, Through the Squint Window into the Anchorage. It is the first book in a series of 3 and it has just been published this month. Liz is at heart a Cantadora, or actually, Liz, can you say the second word?
Ciko.
Okay, Ciko.
Ciko, which is an African storyteller from the Xhosa nation.
Oh, fantastic. So Liz is a storyteller, in other words, who brings the wisdom of the Enneagram alive, weaving in stories conveying spiritual and cultural wisdom, including science. So welcome this evening, Liz. How are you today? Are you going to introduce us to your book?
Thank you, Tanya. And thank you to everybody who's listening, friends and family. Thank you. I think in a nutshell, Tanya, I really deeply believe that we need a deeper understanding of ourselves. I think our lives are too surface and we need to get in touch with a deeper sense of self. And I really believe that we are a gift to be given. We're not a problem to be solved. We really are a gift to be given. And we're not little tin soldiers in little tin boxes. We are extraordinary human beings. We are creative. We are intelligent. We're just unique and beautiful and extraordinary human beings. And we need to discover this for ourselves. I think that is the point. We need to discover this beauty, this creativity for ourselves and within ourselves. I think that's the main thing. So this book was really instigated by my experience, many experiences, whilst participating in Enneagram workshops all over the world, which were limited to either psychological or Christian paths. And knowing the Enneagram to have way more potential than just those 2 paths, I decided to write a book that contained many spiritual paths and many cultures and traditions. So
wow,
that's the why.
That sounds very, very exciting, Liz. So it sounds like you've incorporated many different aspects into these stories. You've taken stories and you've taken understandings. So how did you kind of weave these into the extraordinary stories in your book? How could you give us a little bit more on how you or where you got your ideas and understandings from?
Well, Tanya, I tend to see patterns that flow through religions and flow through cultures. They tend to jump out at me, and I'll think, that's the same story using a different language or a different icon or a different image than this same story as this story or that story. Or I link them with science and quantum physics. So there's patterns that seem to run through everything. And I recall reading a book by Sir Lawrence van der Post. And in this book, he states that he retells the story of how Johann Sebastian Bach was approached by a student of his. And this student asked him, Papa Bach, how do you manage to create all these tunes? And Bach answered, my dear fellow, he said, I have no need to think of them. I have the greatest difficulty not to tread on them when I get up out of bed in the morning and move around my room. So what does that tell us?
Wow. I think what you're saying here is that everything is already present. We only have to just
Yes,
kind of open our eyes, just get out of bed, and just it's already there. It's waiting to be discovered. We just have to open our hearts, our minds, and our senses and discover what is already
yes.
there. Is that what you're
That's
saying?
the point. That's the point. Everything already exists, Tanya, everything. But I have to kind of download it. I have to be open to receive, which reminds me of the amazing true story and movie of the man who knew infinity. His name was
Okay.
Ramanujan, and he was a genius mathematician. And he saw patterns everywhere. He said he saw patterns in the colors of light, in the reflection of light on the water. He said there's patterns in each grain of sand. And he said there was the most amazing patterns in mathematics. And he could see these patterns that flowed through everything. And he said mathematics reveals patterns in the most beautiful and incredible forms. And when he was invited to Cambridge University, I think it was in the late 1800s, and he was invited to Cambridge, and he worked there for a number of years. And they asked him there to prove his formulas. How do you come up with these formulas? And he said, God, she puts them on my tongue when I dream, when I am asleep, and when I pray. And when he was asked to, come on now, prove this, he said, how would I prove it? And why would I doubt it? He said, this is the sentence which always really gets me. We don't
Oh,
create formulas. We wait for our mind to receive the divine. Now, that's the same
wow.
as what Bach was saying. I'm not creating
Absolutely.
this music, it's already present. And I need to wait for
Yes.
my mind to open and receive the divine. Isn't that amazing?
Wow, it's incredible. I found that incredible. What gifted people, and I mean, I suppose it's open for all of us if we but have that mindset, or we have the heart set and listen and look and be and kind of
Listen,
just and listen. Yes,
listen.
absolutely. So
Yes.
where did the patterns, where did this understanding of patterns and the deeper patterns lead you then?
Well, this was another extraordinary adventure. It was about 15 or 18 years ago, quite a long time ago. And I was presenting a workshop to a group of doctors in the UK.
Okay.
And as I was
Wow.
explaining the core triangle, point 9 at the pinnacle, point 6 on the left-hand side, and point 3 on the right-hand side, as
Mm-hmm.
I was explaining this core triangle in terms of Christianity, in terms of Hinduism, in terms of Galileo, in terms of energy focus, one of these doctors, Dr. Liam McLaughlin, who's often
Mm-hmm.
called McGlow, Dr. Liam McLaughlin was getting quite energetic about all this, because he said that he could verify neurologically, biologically, and physiologically these three core points on
Mm.
the diagram, the internal triangle. He said neurologically, point 9, point 6, and point 3 is
Mm-hmm.
verifiable scientifically, also biologically, also physiologically. And I thought, my
Sure.
goodness me, I was actually blown away. And whilst he was speaking, it's like my whole body started to get agitated. My cells started vibrating. which I know is a signpost for me because I'm a body point and I get very excited.
Okay.
But I know when my cells are agitating, something's trying to come through. And so I listened and I listened, and we talked well into the night. Him talking about science and neurology, and me listening like I understood, and I didn't understand a word of it, except every single one of my 70 plus minus 70 trillion cells was on fire. Because
Wow.
I knew, even whilst listening to his scientific language, I knew there was something being born here. Something was agitating into being, and I had to be open to grasp it. And that's it. We have to be open to what
Yeah.
already exists.
Yeah.
I knew.
Oh, so this, sure.
Sorry, Tanya.
Yes,
I
sorry, Liz.
knew there were mysteries here, gold nuggets. I knew there was phenomenal stuff here. And that actually took me on another journey within the Enneagram. So huge thanks.
Okay,
to
okay,
all
that
those
was one
doctors.
of my excellent. That was one of my next questions to you. I wanted to say this really does sound like it opened up new territory for you, and it sounds like those patterns that you're speaking about, you look for them in different areas, not only in cultural traditions, spiritual traditions, but even science, as you've just spoken about. You had a doctor who was kind of verifying certain key information that really opened up new insights for you in terms of the Enneagram.
Yes.
Okay.
And what I found exciting was that because the room was full of doctors, and I'm not bragging here when I say that, although I can hear my critics saying that I am, but never mind.
Okay.
There were doctors from Sweden, from Denmark, from all over Europe, that they'd come together in London to do this workshop. They'd all trained together over the years, and they were also verifying skull development, all sorts of things. It's like it just absolutely blew me away. So yes, that just took
Very
me on another
exciting.
journey.
And have you included all this in your book as well, Liz?
No, I haven't, because it's just too much. So that's why I'm writing a trilogy.
You split it. Okay.
Yes. So this is the first book of the trilogy. The second book, there will be more, and the third book, there will be more, because otherwise it's just way too much, and you get lost, you know.
Absolutely. Okay, so where to from here then, Liz, in terms of so after hearing about all of that and verifying this information, where does that take us to? Because it kind of wants us to ask, you know, where does this all begin?
Who knows, really? But I would like to say that since the dawn of time, we have been asking, who am I? Where do I come from? Why am I here? What is life all about? We've been, it's the oldest question known to man, isn't it? All these questions. And saints and sages and philosophers from all cultures around the world.
All of them, yeah.
Yeah, from all, and science has asked the same question. And none of our questions can be answered fully. They can't. We just can't answer them fully. So we developed many belief systems to relieve those who question. Now, this may have settled some, but it equally thwarted others, because when we created the belief system, we put a boundary around it, and that doesn't suit everybody, because some of us need to explore. Some of us need to investigate many spiritual paths. Some of us need to go on pilgrimages to learn, because what actually resonates with me doesn't necessarily resonate with you. And what feels exactly true for one person doesn't feel true for another person. So we have to find our own truth. And we have to respect that. And those that wish to carry on the faith or the understanding of their ancestors, of their parents, of their communities, that is to be respected also. Each of us in our own way needs to find our own truth. I think that's really important, and have the freedom to do so, if so desired.
Absolutely. So if we think about it, language can kind of divide us. Language, we're born into language, and I guess, stories, are as old as time. We even are now talking about these old philosophers and ancient philosophers, and trying to verify or trying to explain things over time. So what is it about stories that actually, I think, grasped you, that you wanted to actually record them here as ancient stories for modern living? What can we learn from these ancient stories?
Well, I'd just like to pop in here, if I may, and say that I
Yes.
was brought up with stories.
Okay.
My mum and dad had 6 children, and after school, it was storytelling time. So we all gathered around the fire, and we waited for my mum to tell the story. And we all got as close to her as possible, and the youngest was always sitting on her lap. And I used to sit pressed against her legs on the floor, so as the story would weave its way into my being. So I've always loved stories. And so Mum used to tell all sorts of stories, but if we start at the beginning, it would be, how do we explain a holy mystery? How do we explain a totality of being, an absolute, unknowable absolute? How would we explain that? And what language would we use? Would we use the language of the mystics? Silence? Would we use the language of science, the new biology? Would we use the language of religion? Would we use the language of the common people? Which language would we use to take on board as our truth? And I think the deficiency in everyday language leads us to use parables and poetry, which can afford us a rewarding experience. Because when all's said and done, I think we want to experience the divine. We want to experience the holy mystery. We don't want to know it in our head. So what? So I've got information. So what? I want to experience the divine. So the ancient philosophers and storytellers since the dawn of time have used stories and parables. They've used poetry and statues, icons, and fables and allegorical text. All these narratives have been used to create an internal image for us to grasp onto, and to create an image that ignites our imagination, something that sets us on fire, that tries to tease out the nameless mystery, the unknowable mystery. So we've always used stories which have underlying themes and possibly secret codes and secret messages and themes and all sorts of exciting things, which try to tease out the nameless mystery, because that's what we want. And Tanya, when we're listening to a story, whether it's by a parent or a teacher or a friend, when we're listening to a story and we're really listening, we can actually access a space between the words. There's a space between everything. It's like in the eye of the needle, in the center of a hurricane, there's an emptiness. And in the eye of the needle is empty. And we can drop into that empty space while the story is unfolding. We can still our turbulent mind, still our heart, quieten the senses, and become the story as it weaves its way through our culture and our tradition. And find that empty space, drop in there and experience the mystery. Wouldn't that be
That is
wonderful?
beautiful.
Hey?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's why a good storyteller really captures and captivates attention, because everything comes alive. As you
Yes.
say, you can't just have boring, dry as dust facts, because nobody's going to really gain a full contextual understanding. So a story is kind of almost feels like a 3D experience. That's what you mentioned
Yes,
earlier about experiencing. And I guess that's what we're doing then, experiencing the mystery that you're speaking about, experiencing something beyond ourselves.
exactly. We want to
Yeah.
experience something beyond ourselves. And I think I can remember as a child wanting to grab my mother's story and experience it in my bones. That's how I always remember it. I could experience her stories, and she used to make up wonderful stories, as well as read us poetry. And oh,
Wow.
fairy stories and parables and myths and fables, absolutely everything. But I can remember living the story in my bones, in my blood and in my guts and in my bones. That was really important to me as a child, and pressing
Yeah.
so close to her so I could absorb the story. She was a
Mm.
wonderful Ciko. Ciko.
I'll let you say that. I'm not going to say that.
You see, Tanya, the beauty of the narrative, whether it's a
Okay.
myth or a legend, a fairy tale or a parable, the beauty of it is that it is fluid and it's flexible.
Mm.
So it leaves itself open to our senses. So whilst we're listening, we can hear something deeper. We can experience something. We can imagine something. We can intuit something deeper, because the story is fluid and it flows through our culture, through our traditions, religious traditions,
Mm-hmm.
through our lives. And, and, and when we can experience that, it's weaving its way through us and into our life and living. We then begin to
Mm-hmm.
live a story. And that's really important. The mystery, the holy mystery, manifests in similar images and patterns and qualities that flash through our mind, that flash through our heart, and flash through our senses over and over and over again. There's just no end. As each culture changes, as each tradition moves and shifts on, the story changes. It's always like science changes, the theories change in science. Every day
Yes.
on my phone, I've got a new story from science. Quantum physics is revealing something new at least
Mm-hmm.
once a week, but I read something new every day about quantum physics. So the story must change. We must not lock it down. It must
I
be
agree.
open and fluid. And another thing that the story does is offer relationship.
Absolutely.
It
Yeah.
offers personhood and relationship. And that we desire as well. We want to be in relation to or in relation with something greater than ourselves. And stories, however deep the story, however beautiful and wonderful the story, including science, is just a sketch on the truth. Nothing holds all the truth. It's not possible, because the mystery is totally unknowable. But the story is a good place to begin.
Yes. Have you got a lovely story for us this evening? I think you're going to share one with us soon.
I will. But I just want to say that some religions have lost their fluidity, and they've become solid and rigid, yes. And their sacred texts, which are beautiful. All religions' sacred texts are so beautiful, but they've become dogmas.
Yes,
and creeds.
absolutely.
And so they become limited, and they limit people. It's just, we all know the disadvantage of this, so I don't want to go there.
It doesn't have that, yeah. I think what I'm getting from what you're saying, it doesn't have that sense of aliveness, that sense of new understanding, because as you said, each time you come to the story, you may have heard it many times, but you are changing, and you may have new dropping insights. You may bring something different, because it's a relationship between you and the story.
Yes.
So yes, I think the sense of when somebody tries to lock something down and saying there's no other meaning, for something, it's only this little rigid understanding, then it does become too fixed,
and then it becomes judgmental.
And my opinion versus your opinion, and
really, do we need to go there? Really, I want to read a quote by physicist Niels Bohr. He was
lovely.
I think he got a Nobel Prize also in about the 1800s. A physicist, Niels Bohr, said, quote, "We must be clear that when it comes to atoms, language can only be used as in poetry. The poet is not nearly so concerned with describing facts as with creating images and establishing mental connections." Isn't that wonderful from a physicist?
I love that. It's almost like it's poetry in itself.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So what I wanted to do now, if we've got time, is to share a story that I've written about point 4. And point 4s are often misunderstood, as actually every point is on the Enneagram. But I like to read from my book, which you got the picture there.
Lovely.
I'd like to read from my book, if I can find it. The story I've used to exemplify point 4. And this will take about 10 minutes. So, yes, it's the story of Kuan Yin. So what I'd like you to do is be comfortable, sit comfortably, and relax, and just listen gently. Just listen gently. This is the story of Kuan Yin, who is the mother of mercy. And I'd like you to see if you can see yourself in this story. Now, Kuan Yin is one of the most universally loved deities in the Buddhist tradition. She is adored and venerated in cultures throughout Asia. She is known as the Great Mother, the manifestation of mercy and compassion, offering all beings rebirth through her mercy and forgiveness. And she calls her children to find solace in her heart. She is able to enter nirvana or heaven, but sacrifices doing so as she hears the cries of all sentient beings who need her help. She vows to stay here on earth, to free all beings from suffering, granting freedom with the opportunity of new life through rebirth. She particularly rescues those endangered, in dire straits, or those floundering in perilous situations. She is a particular protector of women and children, and the fertility goddess who grants new life eternally. She will always champion the less fortunate, especially the sick, disabled, and poor. She is known as the heavenly protector. Examples of the feminine goddess are Mary, the Mother of God, the Christian goddess of mercy, Kali, the Hindu goddess of liberation, Tara, the Tibetan goddess of compassion, Venus, the Roman goddess of love and beauty, and we also have Hahaiwuhu, the Hopi divine mother, and Isis, the Egyptian goddess, who cures the sick, brings the dead to life, and is connected to all rituals and rites concerning the dead. Thousands of years, the holy mystery has been imaged as feminine. So in the Buddhist tradition, Kuan Yin is often depicted with 11 heads, 1,000 hands, with an eye on each palm. Thus the story opens. Long, long ago, in a very distant and foreign land, there lived a little girl, or a little boy, whose heart was wide open and was touched so deeply by all the sorrows of the world that she went out of her way to help and serve those in pain. Despite strenuous efforts on her own behalf, she realized there were many thousands of beings full of grief and misery, and her heart cried out to them all and became full. After struggling to help and understand the needs of so many, her head began to split open. The Holy Mystery, seeing her plight, not only gave her 11 heads to help her hear the cries of many, but the mystery also gave her holy mercy and compassion to understand their hearts. Upon hearing the cries of deep sorrow, she tried to reach out to them all, but found her 2 arms shattered into thousands of pieces. Once more, the Holy Mystery came to her aid and gave her 1,000 arms, allowing her to reach far and wide and to aid the plight of many at the same time. The eyes depicted on each palm allowed her to see all the suffering, the sorrow, the pain, devastation, anguish, and trauma of humanity. And she is always available to listen and will come to our aid and transform our lives. This story explains point 4, the particular point. It also explains those who live at point 4, why they're always attracted to pain and suffering, rites and rituals, death and rebirth, and traumas, because this is their pattern. So a new paragraph, dragon, the fiery serpent of the deep. There are wonderful images depicting Kuan Yin riding tumultuous waves on the back of her earthly vehicle, dragon. He is enormous, volatile, powerful and fierce, whilst breathing fire. And he can be terrifying, often wielding violent and cruel tactics. His fiery breath alienates him, pushing people away, leaving him feeling abandoned, left out, rejected, and alone. The enormous emotional energy and power he wields threatens to overwhelm him and destroy him as well as others, and needs to be brought into the service of the goddess. She is serene as she guides the fiery serpent of the deep through storms, tempests, and frenzied waters. She is the personification of emotional strength, equilibrium, and self-mastery. And these qualities are depicted in Kuan Yin's graceful bearing atop dragon. She is unmoved by the fierceness of the creature or the swirling waves. She is in command of herself, her mode of travel, and the forces of nature around her. Kuan Yin's merciful and compassionate nature has a powerful ally in dragon as she rides upon his back into the earth. To the earth. And she becomes, and point 4 becomes the source and carrier of mercy and compassion for you and me. Now, new paragraph, yin yang. Holy mercy is yin and can tame yang. Sorry, I'll start again. Holy mercy is yin and can tame the yang energy of dragon. So when yin and yang fly together in balanced harmony, enlightenment and an original rebirth occurs. Excuse me, Tanya.
Shame. Don't worry. I'll chat so long.
Sorry.
I love these images. I love these images. They're so full of color. And they explain the story that you're telling so beautifully.
Excuse me.
So you really understand. I mean, those waves look like powerful emotion.
Correct.
And I know that the point in the Enneagram that you're talking about does have extraordinary depth and extraordinary range of emotion as well.
Yes. So when yin and yang fly together in balanced harmony, enlightenment and an original recreation occurs. We are made completely new, never a second-hand version. And somewhere inside our heart, the holy mystery, as mercy, flies freely into our lives. The grief and sorrows of the world are in front of her eyes and ears for her to see and hear, so that her mercy and absolution releases from the slavery of our own thought and leading us to an original recreation. New paragraph. Sorry.
Oh, shame. Where are those mints when you need them?
That's swallowing water too quickly.
Yes, yes. I'll just sit quietly and take a deep breath.
I went
There.
to Toastmasters for 10 years. And the thing that I came away with was, it's really fine to make as many mistakes as you can. Just carry on regardless.
Exactly.
So we will.
Exactly.
So the next paragraph is turbulent waves.
Mm-hmm.
The turbulent waves symbolically represent the thunderous, swift-moving, emotional highs and the deep lows experienced at this point. We either ride those waves with grace and serenity or tumble headlong into their roller coaster, restless currents. In the face of chaotic circumstances, our choice are determined by our mastery, not by the events themselves. We need to be careful here, as self-mastery does not mean blocking, suppressing, or denying our feelings or emotions. It means feeling them fully, yet riding them, as Kuan Yin does. This point will always have highs and lows, delights and sorrows, and the widest and wildest range of feelings available, as does Dragon. However, let us remember that Dragon is meant to serve the goddess, not the other way around. The goddess does not serve Dragon. Kuan Yin's mastery is symbolic of our transformational processes, which is achieved when we stay steady and ride our waves to equilibrium. Can we glide atop the storm with equanimity? If so, do we feel equally graced and serene? We, like Kuan Yin, often know and understand the troubled energies behind the reasons people hurt and harm each other, and why they wrangle and dispute, fight and maim. We know and understand this both through the turbulent manic highs and the sorrowful depressive lows of our human nature, depicted as Dragon. There's a tendency towards a split here, gravitating towards either the highs or the lows, although both are available and expressed singly and or together. Predominantly high, predominantly low, or both together, triune in nature. We, like Kuan Yin, knows what motivates aggressive behaviors and can offer healing through our sacred heart of understanding and forgiveness. Kuan Yin is also known as the courageous one. And so are we as we tame Dragon's wild, violent, and often cruel nature. So I'm not going to read any further.
Okay.
But
wow.
We
I love
need
that
to
list.
ride those waves to serenity. And this point is exemplified beautifully by Kuan Yin. And all the other chapters in the book, there are stories from Christianity, from Judaism, from Hinduism, and many stories from many traditions, which each and every one of them depict each point on the Enneagram beautifully.
I think that would be a lovely read, because you really get a full understanding of that point by really the words that you've chosen, and you've really
Yes.
chosen them well, to explore those images, to explore those stories, to explore the more contextual rich information, or contextual information, and meaning. That's the word I'm looking for,
Yes.
meaning behind the story.
Yes.
So I love it. Really beautiful, Liz. I'm looking forward to your actual physical book launch, which I'm
Yes.
hoping that you're going to be giving us a date soon.
Yes, we'll do that. We'll do that.
Okay, so I just wanted to say to everybody, there are people that are online at the moment. If you have any questions, any comments, I have shared a few of comments that have come through already. I love Pam's one. She just loves your storytelling, Liz. Such a beautiful gift.
Thank you, Pam.
If anybody has any questions, please post them here. I'm sure Liz would love to answer them, but she'll also answer them if you come to her actual physical book launch.
Yes,
Have you got a date yet, Liz? Or is that still to come?
It's still to come, but it will be in a
Okay.
couple of weeks. I think it's in about
Okay.
3 weeks. I'm just
Okay.
arranging with the lockdown and all the necessary precautions and that sort of thing. So I will put the date out, and we will make a plan.
Lovely. I'm really looking forward to it. So while we're waiting for more comments or questions to come through, I just wanted to share something with you, actually, Liz.
Okay.
A friend of mine shared it with me this week. His name is Neil. I don't think he's watching, but maybe he can watch this afterwards. I know this poem. I have heard it before, but he reminded me about it this week, which is really beautiful, and I think fits in with what we are discussing today. And it's a poem by T.S. Eliot, written in 1942, called Little Gidding. And apparently it was a part of 4 quartets, and this was the 4th quartet. It's a very long poem, but I'm just taking a short little excerpt out of it. And T.S. Eliot says, "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started, and know the place for the first time, through the unknown remembered gate, when the last of earth left to discover is that which was the beginning." And I just thought that just really, for me, explained a lot about the fact that it's already here. Everything is here already.
Yes.
And we really have to just drop in and down, and kind of, the understanding is already there, but we may not understand it yet until we've ready for it, perhaps.
Yes.
Ready for the understanding.
And while I'm here,
Yeah.
oh, thank you, Patricia. Please save me a book for next time we meet.
Fabulous. Please save me a book for the next time we meet. I have loved these sessions. Fantastic.
Thank you, Patricia. I would just like to really to thank you, Tina.
Okay.
I would really like to thank Sarah McKenna, who drew the images for me, and she's drawn some amazing images which also exemplify the story and the point. So thank you, Sarah. And also Carista Boatwright, who created the diagrams for me. And also Simon and Anastasia, who created this wonderful, the front and the back of the book. I absolutely love it. And
I do too.
And again, I want to thank Dr. Leah McLaughlin, who actually set me on a totally different road to understanding the Enneagram from many, many spaces, particularly physiologically, neurologically, and biologically, he's just opened so many doors for me. And he didn't even know the Enneagram. But the way I was explaining and the age that I was explaining these points, so we're very, very good friends now. And his darling wife, Kelly Jane.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to reading those little bits further on down the line.
Yes.
So to everybody out there, as soon as we have a date from Liz, I will put it up on the page and let you know. And we would love to see you at her book launch with all the necessary COVID-19 protocols.
Absolutely.
It will be a very safe space.
Yes.
Okay. And Liz, you know what I would want to say thank you to you, because I've known you a very long time. I think I've known you also for well on 25 years.
Easily, yes.
And throughout the time that I've known you, you always it's very important for you to integrate your understandings. So it's never just one piece of the pie that you kind of give as an understanding. You really are fantastic at being able to bring in different stories and different understandings, and to make it as holistic as possible. So I really like the fact that I know that you were trained as a minister, but you've also brought in different traditions, and you've even brought in science to try and really give a deeper awareness of the Enneagram. So I really appreciate that, and I think it's going to be a real treat reading the book.
Thank you, Tanya.
Great. So I don't think we have any more questions. Is there anything that you'd like to still share, Liz?
Well, what's just popped into my mind is the word Catholic. Catholic means universal. So if one story is true in one religion, if it's true, it must be true in another. I think we've lost Tanya. So I will say thank you very much to those who are listening, and hopefully I'll see you again or at the book launch.
Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. It seems that we still have internet problems in the country, but we do what we can. So unfortunately, we've lost Liz now. So I think we had really got to the end of the discussion. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in, and to stay tuned for later when we actually publish dates. I will publish it on my webpage. Thank you very much. Enjoy your evening. Take care, stay safe, and I hope you enjoyed the broadcast. Best wishes.